The valley of the shadow of death. Now, at the end of the valley of humiliation was the valley of the shadow of death. Christian needed to go through it because it was the only way to the celestial city. Now, this valley was a very solitary place. The prophet Jeremiah thus describes it: a wilderness, a land of deserts and of pits, a land of drought and of the shadow of death, a land that no man but a Christian passed through, where no man dwelt. Now, here Christian had a more difficult battle than in his fight with Apollyon, as you shall see by what follows. I saw then in my dream, when Christian came to the borders of the valley of the shadow of death, that two men hurrying back met him. They were children of those who brought back an evil report of the good land of Canaan. Christian then questioned as follows: "Where are you going?" They cried back, "And if you prize either peace or life, then you will turn back also." "Why? What is the matter?" Christian wondered. Matter? They exclaimed. "We are going the same way as you are now traveling, and went as far as we dared. Indeed, we were almost past being able to come back. For had we gone a little further, we would not have been here to bring the news to you." But what have you met with? "Man, why, we were almost in the valley of the shadow of death, but fortunately we looked ahead and saw the danger before we come to it." "But what did you see?" "Man, see? Why, the valley itself, which is as dark as pit. We saw hobgoblins, satyrs, and dragons of the pit. We also heard the continual howling and yelling like people under unutterable misery who sat bound in affliction and chains. And over that valley hangs the discouraging clouds of confusion. Death also spreads his wings over it. In a word, it is in every way dreadful and utterly chaotic. In spite of what you have said, yet this is the way to my desired haven. Though it is your way, we will certainly not choose it for ours." So they parted. Though it is your way, we will certainly not choose it for ours. So they parted, and Christian went on his way, keeping his sword drawn in his hand, for fear that he should be assaulted. I then saw in my dream that as far as this valley stretched, there was a very deep ditch on the right hand. That is the ditch into which the blind had led the blind in all ages, and have both miserable perished there. Behold, on the left hand was a very dangerous quagmire, into which, if even a godly man falls, he can find no bottom for his foot to stand on. Into that quagmire King David once fell, and no doubt would have been smothered had not he who is able plucked him out. The pathway through this valley was exceedingly narrow. Therefore Christian had great difficulty, for when he sought in the dark to shun the ditch on the one hand, he was ready to tip over into the mire on the other side. As he carefully thought to escape the mire, he would also almost fall into the ditch. Thus he went on, sighing bitterly, for besides the dangers mentioned above, the pathway was so dark and that often when he lifted his foot to step forward, he did not know where or upon what he would set it next. About the midst of this valley he saw the mouth of hell, which was very close to the narrow path. Now, thought Christian, what shall I do? The flame and smoke would continually come out in such abundance, with sparks and hideous noises, things which Christian could not fight with his sword, as he did Apollyon before. Therefore he was forced to put his sword away and take another weapon called all prayer. So he cried out, "O Lord, I beseech you, deliver my soul." Thus he went on for a great while with the flames still reaching towards him. He also heard doleful voices and rushing to and fro, so that sometimes he thought he would be torn in pieces or trodden down like mire in the street. This frightful sight was thin, and these dreadful noises were heard by him for several miles. Arriving at a place where he thought that he heard a company of fiends coming forward to meet him, he stopped it and pondered what was best for him to do. Sometimes he had half a mind to go back. Then again he thought he might be already halfway through the valley. He also remembered how he had almost vanquished many dangers, and that the danger of going back might now be much more than for him to go forward. So he resolved to persevere on the dangerous path. Yet the fiends came nearer and nearer, and when they were almost upon him, he cried out with the most forceful voice, "I will walk in the strength of the Lord my God." With this, the fiends retreated and came no further. It is important to note that now poor Christian was so bewildered that he did not know his own voice just when he had come come near the mouth of the burning pit, one of the wicked ones snuck up stealthily behind him, whispering and suggesting many grievous blasphemies to him, which he thought had proceeded from his own mind. This tried Christian more than anything that he met with before, to think that he would now blaspheme him who he loved so much. Yet if he could have helped it, he would not have done it. But he had not the discretion either to stop his ears or to know from whence these blasphemies came. When Christian had traveled in this disconsolate condition for a considerable time, he thought that he heard the voice of a man somewhere ahead of him, saying, "Though I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Then he was glad, and for these reasons. First, because he realized by this that someone who feared God was in this valley as well as himself. Secondly, he realized that God was with him in that dark and dismal state, though he could not perceive him. Thirdly, he hoped that he could overtake the person ahead of him and to have company soon. So Christian went on and called to the person ahead of him, but that person did not know what to answer, for he also thought that he was alone. By and by, the day broke. Then Christian said he had turned the shadow of death into the morning. Morning having come, Christian looked back, not out of the desire to return, but to see by the light of the day what hazards he had gone through in the dark. So he saw more perfectly the ditch which was on the one hand and the quagmire which was on the other side. He also realized how narrow the way was which lay between them both now. He saw the hobgoblins, satyrs, dragons of the pit, but all were afar off, for during the day they did not come near, yet they were revealed to him according to that which is written, "He reveals the deep things of darkness and brings deep shadows into the light." Now Christian was much affected with his deliverance from all the dangers of his solitary way. These dangers, though he feared them more before, when he saw them more clearly now, because the light of the day made them conspicuous to him. Walking now in the daylight was another mercy to Christian, for though the first part of the valley of the shadow of death was dangerous, yet this second part, which he had yet to travel, was, if possible, far more dangerous. From the place where he now stood, even to the end of the valley, the whole way was so full of snares, traps, snags, nets, pitfalls, and entanglements, that had it now been dark as it was when he traveled the first part of the valley, though he had 1,000 lives, he still would have perished. But just now the sun was rising. Then Christian said, "His candle shines upon my head, and by his light I walk through darkness. In this light, therefore, he came to the end of the valley. Now I saw in my dream that at the end of this valley lay blood, bones, ashes, and mangled bodies of men, even of pilgrims who had previously gone this way. While I was pondering this, I spotted a cave a little ahead of Pilgrim, where two giants, Pope and Pagan, dwelt in olden times by their power and tyranny. The men whose bodies, bones, blood, ashes, and mangled bodies which lay there had been cruelly put to death. But Christian went by this place without much danger, whereupon I was somewhat bewildered. I have learned since that Pagan had been dead for a long time. As for Pope, though he is still alive, he is, by reason of old age and also of the very defeat which he met with his younger days, he has grown so deranged in mind, stiff in his joints, that he can now do little more than sit in his cave's mouth, glaring at pilgrims as they go by and biting his nails because he cannot get at them. So I saw that Christian went on his way at the sight of the old man who sat in the mouth of the cave. He could not tell what to think, especially because Pope spoke to him, though he could not go after Christian, saying, "You never mend until more of you are burned." But Christian was silent, and so went by without being harmed. Then Christian sang, "O world of wonders, I can say no less, that I should be persevere in that distress that I have met with here. O blessed be that hand that from it has delivered me, dangers in darkness, devils, hell, and sin. This compassed me while this valley was in, yet snares and pits and traps and nets did lie my path about, that worthless foolish I might have been caught, entangled, and cast down. But since I live, let Jesus wear the crown."
존 번연의 Pilgrim's Progress 중 The Valley of the Shadow of Death는 크리스천이 극심한 영적 공포와 유혹, 사탄의 공격을 경험하는 어두운 골짜기를 묘사합니다. 시편 23편의 9절에서 영감을 받은 이 장면은 그리스도인의 인생 여정 중 깊은 시련과 내적 고통을 상징합니다. 다음은 이 장면의 내용을 이해하기 위한 질문과 모범 답안 5개입니다. What does the Valley of the Shadow of Death represent in Christian's journey? A1. It represents a period of intense spiritual darkness, fear and internal struggle. Christian walks through this valley where he is assaulted by demonic voices, despairing thoughts and overwhelming temptations. The valley symbolizes times when faith is tested and God's presence seems absent, echoing Psalm 23:4. Q2. What spiritual weapons or defences does Christian use to survive in the valley? A2. Christian relies on prayer, scripture, the word of God as a sword, and faith to keep moving forward. He also remembers past victories and the promises of God. Despite his fear, he keeps walking forward, trusting that God is still guiding him, even if he cannot feel it. Q3. How is Christian's experience in this valley different from his earlier trials? Unlike earlier external obstacles, this valley is deeply internal and psychological. He faces not just danger but despair, doubt and confusion. The battle here is largely in his mind and soul, making it more terrifying and personal than earlier challenges like facing Apollyon. Q4. What does Bunyan suggest through the silence of God in this part of the journey? Bunyan shows that even when God seems silent, he is still present. Christian walks for a time without feeling comfort or hearing divine guidance, yet God's grace sustains him invisibly. It teaches readers that faith often means walking in the dark while still trusting.
Q5.
Why is the path through the valley so narrow, and what happens if Christian steps off? A5. The narrowness of the path symbolises the difficulty of staying faithful in dark times. On either side lie deep ditches, one leading to hell and the other to deadly traps. If Christian deviates from the path, he could be destroyed. This illustrates how critical it is to stay focused and alert in times of crisis. In the Pilgrim's Progress, when Christian walks through the Valley of the Shadow of Death, John Bunyan makes a notable reference to two figures at the end of the valley, the pagan heathen and the Pope. The text states, "Now I saw in my dream that at the end of this valley lay blood, bones, ashes and mangled bodies of men, even of pilgrims that had gone this way formerly. And while I was musing what should be the reason, I espied a little before me a cave where two giants, Pope and pagan, dwelt in old time, by whose power and tyranny the men whose bones, blood, ashes, etc. lay there were cruelly put to death. But by this place Christian went without much danger, whereat I somewhat wondered. But I've learnt since that pagan has been dead many a day. And as for the other, though he be yet alive, he is by reason of age, and also of the many shrewd brushes that he met with in his younger days, grown so crazy and stiff in his joints, like that he can now do little more than sit in his cave's mouth, grinning at pilgrims as they go by, and biting his nails because he cannot come at them." English explanation of the lesson. This passage teaches a historical and theological allegory about the decline of two major forces that once persecuted Christians. One, the pagan heathen, is dead. Bunyan refers to the decline of ancient paganism, especially Roman and Greek idolatry, which once violently opposed Christianity. This figure being dead many a day means pagan persecution of Christians had ceased in Bunyan's time. It reflects the idea that pagan empires have fallen and no longer pose a spiritual threat to pilgrims. Abstract 2. The Pope is old and weak. Bunyan, writing from a Protestant perspective, depicts the Pope as a once dangerous figure who now lacks real power. Though still alive, the Pope, symbolising Roman Catholic authority, is now crazy and stiff in his joints, meaning his influence has greatly diminished. He can only sit and watch pilgrims, unable to harm them. He bites his nails in frustration.